Alright, today we are looking at how to use law of sines and law of cosines, which you may remember from previous math classes, but it's a way to use our sine and cosine trig functions without having to use right triangles. So first off, we're going to start off with law of sines, and this is your formula for law of sines, but just to give you an idea of where these are coming from, if I have triangle ABC, angle A is across from side A, angle B is across from side B, and angle C is across from side C. So I can use these proportions to find missing side lengths or missing angles. The first one we're going to do is going to be set up using angle, angle, side, so where you know two angles and then a side that is not between them, and we'll get into the importance of that later. Angle, angle, side. So let's say we know that angle B is 102.3 degrees, and we know angle C is 28.7 degrees, and then we know side C is 27.4 degrees. Sorry, not degrees, 27.4. Right, and I want to know A and B, so I can set up my proportions. Sine of angle A, which actually I could probably find pretty easily because all the angles in a triangle add up to 180. So I do 180 minus 102.3 and minus 28.7. I get that angle A is 49 degrees. So I have sine of 49 degrees over side A, which I don't know. Sine of angle B, which is 102.3 degrees, over side B, and sine of angle C, which is 28.7 degrees, over side C, which is 27.4. I can solve these proportions, so I can just cross multiply and divide. So obviously I don't want to use the first two ratios together because there's two variables here, so I could use my sine 49 degrees over A with the sine 28.7 degrees over 27.4, cross multiply, divide, do it again to find side B. So if I'm using this for side A, I'm kind of ignoring this middle one here. So I'm going to do sine of 49 degrees times 27.4, which is 20.679 roughly. And then sine of 28.7 times A, which you could go ahead and type in, but I would recommend not because we do not want to round. This way I still have the 27.679, actually the whole decimal, out of my calculator, and I can just divide both sides by that sine of 28.7, which ends up giving me that A equals 43.06. Doing the same thing to find B, cross multiply here, 27 times sine of 102.3, and then I would divide by my sine of 28.7. I should get that B is equal to 55.75. So again, cross multiply, and then you would be dividing by the sine of 28.7. Just make it a little bit harder, but another way to use this, and this time we're going to try to find some angles. So with a word problem, a pole tilts toward the sun at an angle of 8 degrees from the vertical. So there's my vertical, there's my pole, this is 8 degrees, and since I did it towards the left, that would mean that my sun is up here. So tilts with an angle of 8 degrees from the vertical towards the sun. Cast a 22-foot shadow, so my shadow would land on the ground. And the angle of elevation from the tip of the shadow to the top of the pole, so from the tip of the shadow up to the top of the pole, is 43 degrees. How tall is the pole? If you have not already, you should pause this and write down the word problem so that you have it for your notes. when I go to solve this, I need to actually use angles that are inside the triangle. So that 8 degrees is this little piece here, which means that whole angle is 98 degrees. So I can erase that 8 degrees. Now that I know that that angle in my triangle is actually 98 degrees. Okay, which means that the angle at the top would be 39 degrees. To make it a little bit easier just when we're talking about this, I'm going to go ahead and label my triangle as ABC. So I want to find out how tall the pole is, so that would be side A. So I know I'm going to use sine of 43 degrees over A. And I could set up my whole proportion. I mostly want to make sure that I include the angle and side pair that I actually know. So that would be with C. So sine of 39 degrees over 22. Again, you could set up the third one with sine of 98 degrees over B, but because I don't know B, this doesn't really help me find A. So over here, I would cross multiply 22 times sine of 43, then divide by sine of 39. I get A is 23.84 feet. If you are not getting these same values, make sure your calculator is in degree mode. Oh, and this one was set up as angle, side angle. So the one before was angle, angle, side. This one's angle, side, angle. Know that for both of them we had to have at least 2 angles. My next one is law of cosines. So when I'm doing law of cosines, if you look at that formula, c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine c, this first part, c squared equals a squared plus b squared, that's just your Pythagorean theorem. But because it's not a right triangle, that's why we have this minus 2ab cosine c. Also know that this does not have to just be set up to find side C. If I wanted to find side A, I could set it up with the A on that side, and then all of these A's and B's would switch to B's and C's, and this would be cosine of angle A. So whatever this angle is over here has to be the angle that's across from that side. It also needs to be the angle that you know. So that will dictate a lot of which direction I go. I have to use an angle I know when I'm doing that. So let's say I have triangle ABC. Apologize for my horrible lines. Okay, so the only angle I know is angle A, so I'm actually going to set this up with angle A and trying to find side A. So B is going to be 15, so I have 15 squared plus 10 squared equal, oh, that's just be minus 2 times 15 times 10 times cosine of 115 degrees. What's great is you can, if you watch your parentheses, type this in all at once. When you do that, you should get 451.79. If you typed it in, you did not get that. One, make sure you're still in degree mode. But make sure, if you want to break it up, you can. So 15 squared is 225. 10 squared is 100. 2 times 15 times 10 times cosine of 115 was a negative 126.785. So that minus a negative actually became a plus. If you cannot type it in all at once, you are welcome to break it up into pieces. So to figure out what A is, though, I do the square root, and I would get 21.26. Make sure you do not round until the very last step. Now I realize I had to round these when I was writing down my answer, and it's fine to round when you're writing it down, but what you're using in your calculator, you should not be rounding. From there, if I wanted to find my other two angles, I could just use law of sines and set this up as sine of 115 degrees over 21.26 equals sine of B over 15 equals sine of C over 10. When I'm trying to find B, let's start with that. Sine of 115 times 15 is about 13.59. Then I'm going to have sine of B times 21.26. Divide both sides by 21.26. So I get sine of B equals about 0.639. Then to figure out what B is, not in my unit circle, so I don't have to worry about that. I can just do sine inverse. So B equals, again, you're just doing sine inverse of your 0.639, which is about 39.75 degrees. And then if I wanted to find C, I know the other two angles, so I could just do 180 minus 115 minus 39.75. It's going to give me that C equals 25.25 degrees. Note that all I originally asked for was A, but you do need to know how to then use that if I wanted to find all of the missing information, because there will be times when I want all of the missing information. And in case you did not notice, at the beginning we started by knowing two sides and the angle between them. You can rewrite law of cosines to find an angle. You could just plug everything into the original formula I gave you and then just solve it, or you can just rework it so that this is your formula. So if I wanted to find, angle C, let's get a triangle first. So it's triangle ABC. Side A is 8, side C is 14, side B is 19. So I've given you all three sides. You're trying to find an angle. You have to start with the angle, the largest angle, or the angle that's across from the largest side. So this would be angle B. You always have to start with that angle. Sometimes it will not work if you start with some of the other angles. So make sure you start with the largest angle if you don't know any of them. When I do this, I'm going to have cosine of B equals 8 squared plus 14 squared minus 19 squared. So notice that the angle that's over here, this is the side that's across from it. You can see that up here in the formula. Over 2 times 8 times 14. That gives me negative 101 over 224, or negative 0.45. Again, this is equal to cosine of B. So to find B, I do cosine inverse of negative 0.45, which tells me that B is about 116.8 degrees. Go ahead and set that up to find angle A. So set it up with cosine of A. When you do that, just as a check, you should get that